Hi, welcome back to KF Movie Channel. Before we dive into the movie recap, don't forget to always be grateful and avoid jealousy. Even if your neighbors just bought a new water dispenser. Otherwise, you might end up facing misfortunes like in the movie The Wait 2023. This film tells the story of a man who takes a job as a hunting ground caretaker. However, his family must bear the curse brought on by his greed. Curious about how the story unfolds? Alright, let's jump straight into the discussion. And if you enjoy this channel, as always, feel free to subscribe, so you don't miss out on more exciting videos from KFMOVIE. The movie begins by introducing a man named Dio, who is having a conversation with a mysterious man named Francisco. Why is he called mysterious? Because at the start of the film, his face is never revealed. During their conversation, Francisco offers Dio a job to oversee a hunting ground in Spain, with a very generous payment. However, there's one condition. Dio must not break the agreement until the specified time frame is up. If he does anything outside the terms of the deal, the land itself will curse Dio and his family. Though it sounds strange and irrational, Dio, in desperate need of money, immediately accepts the offer. Fast forward 3 years later, we see Dio teaching his son Florin how to shoot with a rifle. Feeling that Florin has gotten the hang of it, Dio decides it's time to head home. On their way back, Dio mentions that he'll soon be receiving payment from his boss, Francisco. After 3 years of guarding the hunting grounds, hearing this, Florin becomes excited, knowing they'll soon move to the city. Even more so because he dreams of going to school and becoming a doctor. Upon returning home, Dio meets his wife, Marissa. He then says, "Tonight, we're having fried eggs for dinner." Hearing this, Marissa replies, "Honey, anything you cook always feels special." Marissa feels grateful to have such a romantic husband. Time passes, and the scene shifts to Florin hunting alongside Saul, using a Carabiner 98 rifle. When they arrive back home, Saul proudly announces that the deer was shot by Florin. Impressed by his son's talent, Dio ceremonially marks him with blood and declares that Florin is now worthy of joining the hunt. Shortly after riding his CB motorbike, Dio is seen waiting at Oyono's Ilavino to meet someone. Moments later, he is approached by a local official named Carlos. Carlos requests Dio to set up 3 additional hunting posts, as the hunting festival is just around the corner. This area is expected to attract many visitors, and Carlos is confident it will generate significant regional income. However, Dio immediately declines the request. He explains that not only would it violate Francisco's rules, but the current 10 posts are already the maximum limit. Adding 3 more would increase the risk of hunting accidents, such as stray bullets hitting hunters due to the posts being too close to each other. However, Carlos insists that Dio add 3 more posts. He promises to pay Dio a large salary from the proceeds of this hunting season. Dio is left confused upon hearing this offer. When Dio returns home, he tells his wife about the generous offer from the mayor, which is equivalent to the price of a house in the city, but with the condition that he must add more hunting posts. However, Dio refuses, as he does not want to break his agreement with Francisco. Upon hearing this, Marissa is disappointed and thinks Dio is wasting this golden opportunity. After all, for the past 3 years, Francisco has never shown up. Marissa urges Dio to take this chance so they can live comfortably. Once they finish guarding this place, Dio becomes confused. especially since their son will be joining the hunt this season. The hunting festival eventually arrives. Amid the lively event, with a heavy heart, Dio, who is pushed by his wife, finally accepts the check in the envelope handed to him by the mayor. Once the agreement is made, Carlos announces to everyone that the hunting posts have increased to 13. And with a special rate, hunters are allowed to hunt as much as they want until the specified time. Before the hunt begins, Carlos invites everyone to pray.
Santa María, Madre de Dios, el Señor es contigo. ¡Viva la Virgen de la Cabeza! ¡Viva! Ya sabes.
As his son will also join the hunt, Florin is reminded to be careful and stay low.
Está demasiado lejos, no le tire.
During the hunt, Florin is tasked with monitoring the situation through binoculars.
¿Dónde está el puesto? Están tirando.
They are startled when a stray bullet comes dangerously close to their post. In that moment, Florin tries to pinpoint where the shot came from.
En la loma.
In that moment, Florin tries to pinpoint where the shot came from. Is this part of the curse that is starting to unfold? Meanwhile at home, Marissa is smiling as she receives the payment from the governor. While happily counting the money, she is surprised when she hears someone approaching. It was as if struck by lightning in broad daylight. They were in complete shock when they saw their only son return lifeless. In the midst of their sorrow, Dio rushed out on his CB motorcycle to the bar. Upon arriving at the bar, Dio, devastated, took his frustration out on a bottle of white wine. Returning home drunk, Dio slammed his motorcycle and rushed to check on his wife. Seeing her lost in grief, he approached her and said, "If only we hadn't been tempted by the money from the mayor, maybe none of this would have happened." The next day, Dio woke up and was shocked to find his wife had disappeared. Panicking, he noticed the clothesline had been cut. Fearing something had happened, he decided to begin searching. By nightfall, Dio sought help from Saul and some villagers to search for Marissa. Saul suggested they split up to speed up the search. They were shocked when they found a group of wild boars feeding on a human's severed leg. Meanwhile, Dio was horrified to discover his wife hanging from a tree. It turned out that Marissa, overwhelmed by guilt over the death of their son and lacking faith, had taken her own life. By day, Marissa, who had strayed from her faith, had no one to mourn her during her burial. At that moment, Dio was further crushed by the relentless losses he had suffered. Now, overwhelmed with frustration, Dio continued to squander the money from the Bupati's bribe on drinking. In the midst of his depression, Dio was startled when he briefly saw the apparition of his son. Moments later, his anger intensified when he saw the Bupati stopping in the middle of the road. It turns out, driven by vengeance over the Bupati's decision, Dio planned to send him to hell. Luckily, the bullet he used was not live. In the end, Dio struck the Bupati with a single blow, ending his life. Soon after, Dio planned to bury the body in an empty field. While digging the grave, he was surprised to find a strange metal box buried in the ground. The next day, Dio became more convinced that he had been cursed when the vegetables in his garden suddenly began to rot, and birds died on the spot. Driven by curiosity, Dio tried to check the contents of the box he had found. Thinking it was treasure, he was shocked to find that the box contained a goat's skull, human hair, and teeth. Believing these items were related to witchcraft, Dio immediately destroyed them. Shortly after, the strange events escalated when his pet dog suddenly began acting aggressively. Not long after, Dio was visited by Saul, who had come to deliver a message. It turned out that Saul had brought a letter from Francisco. Since Dio had never gone to school, he asked Saul to read it for him. As Saul read the letter, he mentioned that Francisco was disappointed because Dio had broken the agreement, especially regarding the collaboration with the mayor. Francisco emphasized that Dio would have to face all the consequences of his actions. After reading the letter, Saul urged Dio to leave the land before something more terrifying happened. As he was about to leave, Saul also revealed that the police were looking for the missing mayor, who seemed to have vanished without a trace. That night, fearful of being caught, Dio decided to dispose of the mayor's car to prevent the police from finding any evidence. After dumping it in the river, Dio, feeling cold, quickly headed home. The next day, Dio was shocked when an officer named Agus arrived, searching for Mayor Carlos.
Yang sedang mencari keberadaan Bupati Carlos, meskipun
Although panicked, Dio tried to stay calm and covered up everything he had done. After hearing Dio's explanation, the officers continued their investigation elsewhere. However, after the officers left, Dio was puzzled to find the leash of his dog had been cut.
Juliet!
Although he had managed to escape, the dog was injured by barbed wire. It seemed like bad luck kept striking. Dio panicked when his 24-carat ring fell into the drain. Once again, misfortune kept following him. Dio saw a snake coming out of the drain and immediately killed it. A moment later, Dio, who was about to search for his ring, was forced to put down his increasingly aggressive pet dog. After putting down his dog, Dio went to the drain, hoping to find his ring again. He appeared frustrated as he was constantly struck by misfortune. However, unexpectedly, Dio found a bundle of cloth tied with barbed wire. Dio was shocked and felt cursed when he discovered that his own clothes, as well as those of his son and wife, were wrapped around a pig's heart, tied with wire. That night, Dio, unable to withstand hunger, felt his stomach ache. As he ate porridge, he panicked when he found long nails inside the porridge.
Untong sadya.
Fortunately, Dio's transformation into a pig was just a dream. However, his mental state was now shattered, making him feel utterly hopeless. Despite everything, Dio held on to his faith. Seeing the contract letter with Francisco, he decided to channel his anger.
Don Francisco!
The next day, Dio went to Francisco's residence. Noticing the thick layers of dust, he realized that Francisco hadn't been to this place for a long time. At that moment, he was puzzled by a display of sheep ornaments, adorned with family photos. Upon further inspection, Dio discovered a photo of his family, among other families displayed in Francisco's office.
67.
Dio began to realize that every family tasked with guarding the cursed land never lasted more than 3 years. Not only that, he also understood that this partnership would never end well. In no time, an enraged Dio decided to confront Francisco on the final day of their contract. However, without his knowledge, his shirt, which had been lying around, mysteriously disappeared. As Dio arrived armed with a rifle, Saul was puzzled, as Dio was only supposed to come and collect his payment.
Ha venido Eladio.
Finally, after 3 long years, Dio came face to face with Francisco once again. Francisco praised Dio for surviving on the cursed land for 3 years, an achievement no other family had managed. Despite this, Francisco expressed his disappointment over Dio's breach of their agreement by collaborating with the mayor. He warned that the land's curse would continue to bring misery upon Dio's life. But Dio, overwhelmed by anger and despair, no longer cared about the contract or the payment. He was determined to put an end to Francisco once and for all.
Vas a matarme, Eladio. Acaba contigo en el pantano, Eladio, en el coche.
Turns out the shirt wrapped in barbed wire that Dio had previously discovered was a magical object set up by Francisco as a precaution against any rebellion. As if under a spell, Dio was forced to face punishment for his defiance. In his dying moments, Francisco coldly remarked that if Dio had only adhered to their agreement, none of this would have happened, and his son would still be alive today. In the end, it was revealed that Francisco and his followers were servants of the demonic ram that ruled over the cursed land. The film concluded on a tragic note, showcasing the horrors that befell Dio's family as a result of their greed. For almost 3 peaceful years, Dio had lived happily with his wife and son. Yet, nearing the end of the contract, Dio, influenced by his wife, chose to betray Francisco by collaborating with the mayor, leading to their devastating downfall. Since then, misfortunes and suffering kept piling up. Eventually, in his depression and anger, Dio confronted Francisco once more and attempted to end him. However, Dio's rebellion only led to his downfall as he became a victim of dark sorcery. Francisco and his followers were revealed to be part of a cult worshipping a demonic. That's all for the review and discussion of The Wait 2023. Don't forget to like and subscribe so you won't miss other exciting videos. Thanks for watching, and see you in the next video.